What's up again, everybody? Today we are going to talk about So let's get the basics out of the way. In Dice Masters, you build a team of up to 8 cards. At the bottom right on each card is a max number of dice that you're allowed to bring for each card. Most of them have a max of 4. Now you can't just put 4 dice for every card and call it a day because you're only allowed to bring 20 total dice as part of your team. So some of your cards will have more dice available for purchase than others. It's up to you to decide which characters and actions you plan on buying more of on your team and then planning accordingly. You also bring 2 basic actions that are kind of part of your team and kind of not. I say kind of because each of those cards are required to have 3 dice attached to them, and those total 6 dice don't count as part of your 20 total. Also, your opponents can buy your basic action dice, but that's a comment for a different video. So those are the basic rules that lay the foundation to what we are going to talk about. Dice Masters is a unique game in that you aren't building a deck of 30 to 60 cards that you draw from. You're not building strategy based on what you draw from your deck and ignoring other lines of play if you're not holding those cards. In Dice Masters, you have the ability to buy characters in any order that you'd like as long as you can pay for them, and you know fairly well when those characters will arrive. This makes deck building in Dice Masters a totally different beast, as you can have huge amounts of control over how your team will play out every single game. So with all of that in mind, how do we actually go about constructing our team? What do we look to include? Alright, so step number 1 is to pick a card that you like. I'll also say you could also pick a combo. There's nothing wrong with that. I think this is a really simple starting point for building a casual team. Find a card that you like, that you find interesting, or that you think will perform well competitively, and build around it. The card can be your win condition, or it can be one of the other pieces that we'll talk about coming up in a bit, but in any case, we need a starting point. So locate a starting point, either a card or a combo. This should take up either 1 slot or all the way up to maybe 3 slots onto your team. Step number 2 is to build a supporting cast around the card or the combo. This is usually 2 to 3 cards on your team as well. Find the win condition within the card or combo, and if it's not there, then build one. These are characters and actions that you are wanting to buy during the game, the characters and actions that will work with your featured card to help you win. Keep your cast here focused. You generally want a max of 4 cards on your teams that you actually plan on purchasing. I've seen a lot of teams with really good 3-card win conditions, but the other 5 slots on their team are filled with cards that are similar but worse than the ones that they already have. Now, you could do that on purpose as a way of, finding your best 3 to 4 cards by playing that team over and over again and seeing what you gravitate towards buying and what works well. But that being said, I'd plan to iterate later rather than earlier and put more time into thinking the team out and narrowing down the supporting cast before I play the team, because it's going to save you time when you're doing the iterations later. Step number 3 is ramp and churn. Ramp is a game trait that increases the number of dice you'll roll each turn. Churn is the process of thinning out the number of dice in your bag in order to get to the good stuff faster. Outside of a win condition, these are perhaps the most important team inclusions in Dice Masters. You don't need both, but you do need at least one. Speed kills, but in a good way if you're the one with it. Good forms of ramp and churn in modern age can be found in a variety of ways, either character abilities, action cards, or global abilities. Take a look at all the ramp options out there and see which best fits your team before putting one in there. Step 4 is protection. Having a way to protect your win condition is super important. If your opponent builds their team in a similar way to what we're doing right now, then they will also include a card on their team or 2 that could foil your win condition. Including cards that protect your characters from being targeted or absorbing damage that would normally go to you will increase your staying power. Having no protection to your win condition at all means someone who brings some sort of mitigation can deal with your win condition in one way, and that is bad because in this game they don't have to draw into it, they can just buy it and use it. Alright, and step 5 is card text wiping. The last slot to consider is cards that wipe other card text, and this is how you deal with your opponent's win condition. It's also how you can deal with your opponent's protection card, so if they bring something that protects them against your win condition, then you can wipe the card text of said card and then push to win the game. I think a lot about including this onto each team that I play because it does play a huge role in whether or not I can push with some sort of damage. If I'm playing a team that really relies on careful timing and putting together of a combo, then this is a super important piece to the team that I'm building because I need to be able to make sure that it's going to hit when it hits. So those are the 5 types of cards that I would consider putting onto an 8-card team. Now let's talk about the basic action cards. I would find basic action cards that complement your win condition, protect your cards, or add to your ramp or churn. Keep in mind the possibility of your opponent buying your basic action cards when you pick them. As a general rule, and this goes for globals as well, don't include something on your team that could benefit your opponent more than it can benefit you. In that same vein, don't include something that your opponent can use more skillfully than you, unless you're trying to practice, of course. I like including basic action cards that have globals on them because usually those globals are some form of ramp or some form of like buffing. I also like to look for basic action cards that have globals on them not related to the energy types that I have on my team, so that if I roll those, I have something to do with them. Alright, as if that was not enough information for me to give you in one little sitting, there are other things to consider as well, like affiliations, energy types, purchase costs, that sort of thing. As you're building your team, keep in mind the energy types of your chosen characters. Picking characters that have the same energy type is generally a good thing, as their energy faces guarantee you the energy type needed to purchase your other characters. I don't recommend loading your team up with high-cost characters without some sort of plan to get them. I generally like to include at least one 2-cost character that I can buy on turn 1. That provides a little bit of ramp and a guarantee that I'm purchasing something that I can use. It's usually part of that supporting cast as well. Affiliations are also worth considering, especially the big ones like villains or Avengers, those sorts of things. And usually those are part of your either win condition or one of the other parts like ramp or churn. Alright, so that is a ton of information given to you in one short burst, and it can be a lot to take in. If you're an auditory learner, you're okay with what we just went through. You're like, I got it, I'm good, fine. But if you're like me, who's a visual and kinesthetic learner, I learned something by doing it and by watching other people do it, then let's build a team together. Let's go through the whole process and see what we can put together. Alright, so step 1, pick a card, any card. I picked this card. This is Owlman, the super rare, from the new Batman set. He's a 5-cost shield character with a cool crime syndicate affiliation. He's got this amazing stat line where you only have to pay 1 to field any of those sides. A 5/4 for 5 is not bad, it's pretty good. But his ability is crazy. It says while he's active, your villain character dice get +1/+1. So that's a nice little static buff as long as he's out there. His other ability, or the second part of his ability, says when Owlman attacks, your villain character dice get an additional +1/+1. So step 1, Owlman, I choose you. Step 2, find a supporting cast. So my first thought when looking at Owlman is, man, he would make a great finisher on some like really low cost aggro villain team, right? You have a bunch of 2-cost villain characters, you get them out on the field, you're pushing face constantly, and you buy Owlman and you buff them up and continue to hit your opponent, right? Your goal is to just out aggro them, you get more things out onto the field, you just keep pushing, you don't really care about if they have defenders or anything like that. So the next thing that I did was I went and I looked at every single 2-cost villain character that was in Modern, right? Looked at every single one of them, compared their stat lines, I looked at abilities that could possibly, work in an aggro setting, and I decided on 2 characters that I wanted to put around Owlman. So I have a nice 3-card combo. I've got Owlman as the finisher, and these other 2 cards are being buffed by Owlman and can also do some other stuff. The first of these 2 cards is this common Jervis Tetch. Obviously, he's a villain character. He's a 2-cost shield character, which synergizes nicely with Owlman because he is also a shield character. He's got a really bad stat line, a 1-1, 2-1, and a 1-2-2 stat line, but again, he's going to get buffed, so at his best, he's a 4/4. And you can get a lot of him out there. But his ability is what sold me, and his ability says when he attacks, gain control of target opposing sidekick. That sidekick must also attack this turn, if able. So the nice thing about him is that he's basically just ripping down sidekick walls. Even if your opponent just has one sidekick, taking that away, denying them a blocker, and turning it into an attacker that even just hits them for 1 damage is still really, really good. And you can get 4 of them out there fairly easily. Obviously, you have that shield synergy. Overall, a solid and natural fit. Card pick number 2, I'm a little more shaky on, but I think it has some higher upside potential. This is the Uncommon Hush. He's also a 2-cost shield character with that villain affiliation. So again, synergy with our energy types there with those shields. He's got a nice 012, 022, 142 stat line, which can conceivably get buffed to a topside 6/4. A 1/6/4 is really, really good for 2, and so you can get a lot of them out there. His downside is his ability, in my opinion. When he's active, if a bat character is in the field zone, KO Hush and add a die from your back to your prep. A lot of people are really high on this card of it being really good ramp. Some people think it's, as good as PXG. I'm not as big on it, but that's not to say that it's a bad thing. I think in my meta, especially with, I have several friends who run the rare Nightwing a lot. This has a lot of downside for me. If you're not running into bat characters, this could be really, really good. Of course, if you put a bat character on your team and then use this as ramp, like a 2-cost ramp die, I guess. That's good. I don't know. But for my purposes, I think this works really, really well because it's going to be a 6-4 most of the time, or a lot of the time. All right, step number 3, ramp and churn. So for churn, I put onto the team, I put Rip Hunter. This is the common Rip Hunter. He's a 4-cost shield character. So again, shield synergy, hooray. His ability says, while he is active, once during your clear and draw step, when you draw dice from your bag, you can send any number of them to the used pile and draw a new die for each. So this is a great example of modern age, power creep churn. I think if you're looking for ways to mill out your bag and get to the good stuff, there's no better card in Dice Masters right now than this one. If there is, let me know. I've probably just forgotten it, but this is sort of at the top of my list right now. So he goes onto the team, and we buy him fairly early, and then just look for all the good stuff, get rid of all the sidekicks. As for ramp, we have SRA because SRA is amazing. Duh. No, but in all seriousness, SRA actually is amazing. It is both ramp and churn. Funnily enough, I've actually played the team that I'm showing you, that I'm building through currently. I went through this entire process like 2 weeks ago, built the team, played it, made some changes, so we'll talk about maybe the changes after this. I actually cut SRA, and I cut SRA because Rip Hunter is just really good, and I didn't actually ever end up buying it because I just bought Rip Hunter, and that was just as good. So, I mean, ramp and churn are both good, but it looks like churn in this case for an aggro team is just fine. Step number 4, protection cards. I actually put 2 protection cards on this team. One of them is this one, Ronin Between Employers. He's the super rare from the Civil War set. He's got an 012, 024, 135 side, so stat line's pretty good for a 3-drop. Actually, that 5 defense stat line on that top side is really good for a 3-drop. He is a 3-drop mask character, so he doesn't currently have synergy with anything else on our team. He also is an Avengers. He's not a villain, so we don't have that. But again, it doesn't really matter because we're only bringing him just in case we run up against something that gives us trouble, direct damage-wise. Something like that, right? His ability allows you once per turn to redirect all damage from one source to him, so we only buy him if we're looking at something that threatens us with direct damage. The second protection card is a little bit more out of the box. This is Killer Frost, the uncommon version. She's got a really nice ability that allows her, when she is KO'd by a non-villain character die, to force that non-villain character die that KO'd her back to the owner's bag. It doesn't stay out on the field. It doesn't go to KO'd. It goes right back to the owner's bag. So in a way, this is protection against certain annoying win conditions and dice that you just want to get away from you, just stuff you don't want to deal with or you can't necessarily deal with. You can just block with her. This one for me, I was iffy on. I put her on there because she is a villain and she does get that buff, and so purchasing her is not sort of a detriment that purchasing Ronin would be. After I played this team and iterated on it, I actually cut her for some other stuff, but again, that's a topic for another time. I think she works just fine, though. I could have kept her on. I just needed something to cut, and when you only have 8 cards, you have to make some hard decisions. Step number 6, card text wiping cards. Here we have Cold Gun. I put this on the team, and it's crazy, but I put this on the team because I actually do not have a copy of the common Kryptonite. I have bought like the equivalent of a box worth. Unfortunately, I didn't actually get a box when it first came out, but I've bought the equivalent of a box worth of World's Finest, and I do not have a common Kryptonite. In fact, I think I've only pulled 2 Kryptonites, and both of them were uncommon. It's ridiculous. I bought a lot of packs, and I just haven't found a Kryptonite. So this one's on there. I think I would run Kryptonite if I had it, but this one's just fine as well. It wipes card text on its 2 burst faces, which is the main reason to have it there, and that's the problem with it. That's really the only problem with it. I like the continuous aspect. I like the dealing damage aspect, so you can KO a lot of things. But it's really that card text that we're looking for, and so this or common Kryptonite would go onto this team. Quick side note about Shriek from the Maximum Carnage team pack. She's really good. She's card text wiping. I built this team before she was revealed, But now that she exists, she's actually on the team. Man, are we already on step number 6? Step number 6, basic action cards. I've already shown you SRA. The other one that I picked is Haymaker. I like Haymaker a lot. I put it on a lot of teams because I find that I need something to do with fist energy, right? Having some way to buff up my characters, especially on an aggro team where I'm looking to get a ton of characters out. I can just attack with all of my characters, save my fists, wait for them to declare blockers, and then pump up the one that is unblocked to put some extra damage in. Makes perfect sense. The other thing that this team does not have is Overcrush ability, and yeah, it's expensive at 4, but if I really wanted to overcrush something, or if my opponent has some way of blocking constantly and I need some overcrush potential, it's there. So this makes sense, right? So that is 7 out of the 8 cards on my team and both my basic actions. The last card is something that allows me to move something over on turn 1 so that turn 2 I can pay 5 for an Owlman and have him in the bag, potentially, and that is Chalkboard Global, right? So I'm putting this card on there not to use, but if I end up using it, then that's cool. I guess it's some sort of buffing, but it's really just there for the global. I've got the shields to pay for it. I buy a 2-cost character and I rip it over into the prep area, and then roll it on its 2 energy face or just field it as a character. It doesn't really matter because, again, I'm aggro. If I can land it on the 2 energy face, then I can purchase an Owlman and even conceivably rip it over as well with the 6 energy that I'd be looking to roll on turn 2, but that takes up the last slot, and it kind of counts as ramp because every time you buy something and use that, then you're rolling more than 4 dice every turn. So there you go. You got an aggro team built around this idea of buffing up your villain characters. You got cheap villain characters. You've got a nice cool finisher with a good stat line. All around some fun times. Now the last step, and something I kind of mentioned earlier, is iterating upon it. So this means playing the game, playing the team, playing it, and then going, that card sucks, I'm getting rid of it. I'm putting something else in there. Now I've done this with this team a little bit. I've only played like 5 games with it. It's not much. But if you're really conscious about what is working and what isn't, it doesn't take much to start making the changes and start seeing where you need to make the changes, right? So play the team, play the game, see what works, see what doesn't, and then change and make it better. All right, so there you go. That is how I make a team in Dice Masters. Now, this is not by any means the only way you can make a team, the only way you come up with ideas. I'm not telling you that these are, laws that have to go into effect. It's not in some rule book somewhere of, you got to put these cards there. You have to have a protection card. It's really up to you. It's up to what you want to do, but this is what I go through. This is the process that I go through when I make a team. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Tell me what you guys think of this team that I'm working on. Tell me what you guys think of this whole process. As always, thanks for watching.